welcome back to another episode of the podcast. I'm so pleased to have Natasha Nazareth and Ginny Bonifacino on the show today. Natasha and Ginny are the partners and co-founders of Nazareth Bonifacino Law. And the thing that I am taking with me from today's conversation that I hope that you glean some wisdom for yourself is that Natasha and Ginny have built a purpose-driven business from the ground up. And that is really the story, the heart and soul of what today's conversation is all about. They share about what it's looked like to develop their business processes, their work life, the systems they've put in place, to how they develop long-term relationships with clients, even as far as the business entity that they have registered under. Everything that they have done in building their business from the ground up has been incredibly on purpose, which this is something I know that many of you will really connect with. So a little bit more about our guests. Ginny is a co-founder of the law firm, and she has over a decade of experience as a business attorney and outside counsel on both coasts, from Maryland and DC to California. She has a focus in transactional intellectual property and employment law. And something I know that many of you will deeply appreciate is that while she works with clients across all industries, she has a passion for counseling businesses with creative assets that wish to protect and monetize their assets. I think that it's something that she really goes into on the episode, is that she just has a passion for working with creatives and artists. Natasha, the other co-partner and founder, is a wealth of knowledge. She has over 20 years of experience as a practicing attorney with a focus on corporate and business law, employment law and litigation, and education law. Something I really appreciate from today's conversation is that Natasha shares all about how passionate she is about investing in high-quality schools that prepare diverse students for their 21st century global future. She has a deep appreciation for the business of education and the people who make a daily difference in the lives of young people. She also represents individual families, students, and the faculty and staff to assert their rights in schools and across universities. It's a fascinating conversation. We dive into their origin story, what it has looked like to focus on collaboration in every aspect of coming together as partners and co-founders of their law firm. We jump into one of their values around why less is more and what this has looked like putting into practice in the business, which, that's something we talk about a lot here. We talk about money and pricing, and we also jump into how empathy and kindness are incredibly conducive and even necessary for effective advocacy. And they also share with me that they're in the process of becoming a certified B Corp, which I had never heard about, but is incredibly in alignment with becoming a purpose-driven law firm. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Let's jump in. Hello and welcome to the Prosperous Empath Podcast, designed especially for empaths and highly sensitive entrepreneurs just like you who are committed to achieving holistic success. I'm your host, Catherine Wood, Master Certified Coach, author, mastermind leader, and founder of Unbounded Potential, a boutique coaching firm for empathic entrepreneurs. I'm on a mission to bring empathy back into the world of business. Each episode will focus on achieving more by doing less through leveraging empath-friendly leadership practices, boundaries, rituals, and systems, all the while continuing to care deeply about ourselves, others, and the world around us. If you are committed to joyful living and running a conscious business, but amassing wealth while doing so, proving that you can have both in a society that tells you can't, then you are in the right place. Join me here each week to find out how. Be sure to subscribe and leave a review so you won't miss an episode. Plus, you'll find all the show notes and helpful resources over at unbounded-potential.com. Natasha and Ginny, I'm so happy to have you on the podcast today. We were just talking about how the two of you are my first kind of a couple or a partners on the podcast. So excited to have you both here.
Thanks. We're glad to be here.
I was thinking I would love to just jump in and hear a little bit about how the two of you, both accomplished attorneys, kind of came together to open up a practice in partnership.
It all started in COVID. As many stories these days probably do start, is Natasha and I were working at the same law firm together, and we started working together all the time on different COVID-related things as everything was coming out. We would text each other and call each other and help formulate what the strategies for our clients. And really just started collaborating all the time on everything. It wasn't hers, it wasn't mine, it was ours. And so then her, at the time, 10-year-old floated the idea of Nazareth Bonifacino law at some point, and it kind of percolated for a while.
No
So we
way.
started to do it.
Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt. Keep going.
Yeah, so we work together, we work well together, and we decided we had similar values and a similar idea of how we wanted to practice law, and just decided to do it. And I don't know if you'd add anything, Natasha.
I would say that there was a long germination phase, and then one day it just became just crystal clear to me that we were meant to be collaborators, and that there was really no other way forward other than to just jump in and collaborate the way we wanted to and build a practice that was based in joy.
We'll come back to that, building a practice based in joy, but we cannot overstep the fact that you guys started, or you women started a firm together because of your 10-year-old child, Natasha. What was it like to have your whole career inspired by your 10-year-old, your whole career pivot?
So the other part of this is the day that Natasha calls and says, hey, we're talking about this. And she's like, you want to do this? And I pause and I was like, well, I'm pregnant with my third child. And Natasha has 3. And it just, for us, it is why we do this, I would say, is for our kids. And we have all of them together, and how proud they are that their moms are doing this is very important.
I mean, I love that. I believe that so wholeheartedly, that when we pursue our dreams, that we model that for our children, that we model permission to be fueled by your passions and your curiosities and your interests. And having that modeled is some of life's best teachers.
Back to your point about, having a 10-year-old be so clairvoyant. In the midst of COVID, she saw me working day in and day out in the basement while she was, doing remote schooling upstairs. And she saw that collaboration is really a mindset and a skill set, that it's not dependent on time or place, but it's really dependent on who you choose to collaborate with. And from that perspective, it doesn't surprise me at all that clarity came from a very sensitive child who is driven and interested in making a difference in the world, just like we are, and because that's what she saw us doing.
I think it takes a certain type of parent to be open to that input from their child. I think that says as much about you as it does about her.
I often tell people I was a Montessori kid, and the only issue I have with Montessori education is it teaches children to create their own process. So they will never look back without creating their own process of how they're going to move forward.
That's beautiful. Like, I hear, to be their own thinkers.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. Okay, so let's get back to this idea of building a business based in joy. What does that mean to you two?
So I think you can break that down in a couple of ways. And to talk business, really. when you look at all of the research about healthy, profitable businesses that invest in their employees and in their workplace culture are the high producers. And it seems like a no-brainer to us that in a law firm environment where we're always working with conflict, either preventing it or managing it or resolving it, that the most important investment is in your people and in your lawyers and staff. When they are joyful and creative, then you get your best results for clients. So for us, putting the employees first, including ourselves, is our starting point. The second place about being client-centered is doing everything we can to help clients have a successful experience and, frankly, a connected experience from their first connection with us. So we throw a lot of traditional advice out the window. We answer our own phones. We talk directly with people. We pre-qualify them as clients ourselves rather than filtering them through a receptionist. And then we use technology not as a cost saver, but a way to create less friction with client onboarding, and having clients feel like we are attentive, responsive, and their onboarding and exchange of documents and things like that is as easy as it can possibly be.
I love that reminder that when you're taking care of yourselves first and managing, pre-qualifying your own clients, that you're so much more set up to be able to handle conflict better. And I think that that's so powerful, right? Like the reminder that oftentimes when we aren't managing conflict well, it's because we ourselves are not well or present or perhaps grounded in our own self-care or well-being. And something I always appreciate about your LinkedIn posts is they're always value-driven and mission-oriented. Many of the things that you say, I could see myself writing. They don't feel like they talk about law as much as they often talk about culture and building a value-aligned brand. I don't know, is that intentional?
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. Mm-hmm.
So, there's this somewhat trite saying that business is just relationships with money. And in that same vein, to go back to your question of relationship to conflict, people who are in conflict are usually there because they have a relationship with each other. And they might be in different stages of relationship or needing to let go or needing to figure something out so that they can move forward in a win-win way. And so what I try to do is in business for clients, whether it's contracts or business design or employment, I try really hard to look at how is this relationship going to work? What are the interests behind it? And how do we move through healthy conversations and reach healthy agreements that can be implemented? It doesn't always work. Okay. And one of the other pieces for us is that we aren't litigators. We're primarily transactional attorneys. And if folks are really at a place where litigation is the only avenue left, then we're going to turn them over to somebody whose business model is solely to litigate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, thank you for that distinction between in the type of law that you practice. I totally hear that. And the piece that you said about like relationship, it makes me think of a beautiful quote by Brené Brown. She says, "It's hard to hate people close up, lean in." I don't know if you've heard that quote. And I think I say that to clients so often that, like you're likely just being in a superficial relationship if you can't have a honest conversation. There's so many things I want to talk to you about, but maybe for selfish reasons, I used to have a second business as well with a very close friend. And we eventually closed the business and I also lost that friendship. And I still It was a really hard loss. So I think this idea of partnership and being friends and colleagues and partners is an art form. And I wonder what the two of you have learned how to build an effective partnership, given all the hats and the relationships that you've shared together.
Something that we were talking about earlier today was, and this is in our business as well, is just giving. Like, you give, and eventually it comes back to you, as we've been building our business. But I think that holds true as well for our relationship. Is, as we were starting, we did things. We have a master list of everything that had to be done, from setting up the internet to negotiating the lease. And there's a lot of things you have to do. But there was never any bickering about it. We just did it. We took, we just worked together in that sense. And I think that has kind of been our mantra and how we operate together.
We have built trust over several years, and I think becoming business partners was a reflection of the trust we already had in each other's competence, and how we served clients. Going into business together is a whole nother level of trust. And to me, I feel just as responsible for Ginny's family as I do for my own. And that's a different way of thinking as a business owner than being an employee of a larger entity. I also think that, trust is, it's a bank account. It's the small things you do all day long. When you see dirty dishes in the sink at the office, you simply take care of them, and you don't keep score. And I think it's important. We do have areas of the business in which one of us typically takes the lead, and we have good process we have a weekly partners meeting that is our favorite time of the week, because it's a joyful meeting. And we talk about strategy and approaches, and then we trust that the other person will follow through and implement. So there's not a lot of second guessing, but that's because there's always space for somebody to say, I was thinking about this, or I've thought about it another time, and I want to revisit it. And those are all different aspects of trusting the relationship.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that reminder. The idea of, I don't know, in my work with clients, oftentimes we talk about primary relationships, and there's a practice I often offer my married couples, which is the invitation to have a weekly State of the Union, where you talk about the state of the union, how we are doing, not necessarily an opportunity to bicker or complain, but really to talk about how we are doing as a unit and what we need. And I think it's so helpful to have that space and time to talk about versus being in. You talk about, Natasha, you talk about this idea of why less is more. And I'd love for you to expand on this idea of what this means. You say less friction, less overhead, and layers create space for more creativity and joy. What is that for you?
In a law practice, and this is probably true for many other types of professions, of service-oriented professions, it's the direct client contact, which is where the real richness in a relationship and outcome is driven. Sure, you need time at your desk to research and draft and think. But I think in our businesses, the more deeply we connect with our clients and with opposing counsel or other people, the easier it is to focus on the real issues and not dance around the logistics. So I think I mentioned, doing e-signatures and online payments and things like that, ease friction and onboarding clients. But there are things like using online calendaring, like Calendly or Microsoft Bookings, things like that, we use them as tools to have less process and more focused time together with people. So it's not so much that we have some kind of special sauce and special tools that we use. I think we think about them differently than sometimes they're marketed. They're marketed as time savers or money savers. But to me, they're actually ways to help grow relationships.
I really appreciate that reminder that some of the time savers, that they're not necessarily for the two of you, it sounds like they're not necessarily geared towards being more productive or making more money, but it sounds like they are really about taking away the distractions in the way of relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So that you actually get to spend more time being in relationship with your clients.
It also expands as, okay, relationship, more time for our clients and more time for our families.
So the other piece of that is, I think when we spend more time with potential clients, we've got enough of a funnel that we are highly selective. We joke around the office, A clients only. But having fewer clients, so why is less more? Having fewer clients with whom we have healthier relationships, we can provide outstanding services to many clients. But when clients hire us because they deeply trust us, because they feel that we're responsive, when they show that they trust us by paying their bills quickly and easily, those are all ways that we can focus on fewer clients because we have solid relationships in place.
Mm-hmm. It's so refreshing talking to the two of you because, you know, in my work, I've been talking about this idea of internalized capitalism a lot lately, like the ways in which hustle mentality and grind culture are a part of our DNA. And the two of you work in an industry that is very oriented towards grind culture and more is better. So I guess I'm curious what your journey has been, having such differing values in such in an industry that has a very distinct reputation. And I know, you know, there's always, we find our people, but I'm wondering, has that been a challenging road for the two of you?
I was in-house counsel for most of my career. And when I did start taking on private practice clients, the way I thought about pricing was, first of all, what am I worth? And really valuing my time. But also knowing that even within setting market rates, that I would prefer to have a slightly lower rate that didn't put time pressure on me, because so much of my work is really deep thinking and careful writing. And so if my rate is too high, then I create an unnecessary stress on myself, because at the end of the day, I know what the work is worth. And if I set a more reasonable rate, I work at a sustainable pace to create high quality output, then my client is also happier because they can see the value in their bill.
That's a unique perspective. And, you know, it's a little bit different than my own experience, because what I've noticed over the years is as I've increased my rates, I have attracted clients who are more action oriented, more capable, and to some degree, the degree to which they invest in themselves, the degree to which they are committed to their dreams. So it's almost like I get more fulfillment working with the clients who are committed to their dreams. But it sounds like your take is a little different. Maybe I'm hearing this incorrectly, but do you experience that you can take more space and more time if you charge a little less?
That's part of it. But also pre-qualifying clients that that the rate that we offer them is within a comfort zone or a reasonable stretch zone. If a client can't really afford the services, we either have to find a way to bring down the cost for them or point them in the direction of a resource that fits their resources.
The one thing that, as Natasha was speaking, that really sprung to mind was we deal with some really complicated situations. And I think holding ourselves out and having our mantra of A clients only has really given us meaty legal problems. Like, they're very sophisticated issues that require not only having the legal, facts and ability and knowing what the law is, but a level of strategy that has really pushed both of us. And it's just fascinating. It's fun. Like, at the end of the day, I enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
There's that joyfulness going out there again.
Mm-hmm.
We're very happy nerds.
Yeah,
well, pretty much.
Tell me more. I'm a nerd by background too. But I'd actually love for you both to share your areas of specialty, because my understanding is that you both bring distinct skill sets to the practice, that you have different areas of focus. So, I know my audience is going to feel values aligned with you already. So share what your areas of focus are.
Well, our overlap is that we're outside general counsel for clients. So we are typically the first call if anything goes wrong. And we hopefully will prevent things too, but employment and contracts and all that kind of normal stuff. And then I focus a lot on helping creative businesses, entrepreneurs, with trademark protection, copyright, and other related licensing issues. Always the artsy creative people.
I saw that on your site and it made me curious. Why creative entrepreneurs? Is that a passion?
I just love art. Yeah. It's something that I absolutely love and just wanted to incorporate that into my practice.
What modalities are your favorite?
Most of the time, most of my clients end up being like painters and photographers. Definitely has a visual art aspect to it. Over the years, it's, we represent a dance studio, several marketing companies, so that there's a creative element to things. They're not necessarily painting all the time or anything like that.
I love that your niche industry is, it sounds like, guided by what you personally have a deep appreciation for.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. When I decided to go to law school, that was really one of the drivers, is if I was going to do this thing, which I thought I would like, I knew, I wanted to pair it with something that I truly knew I loved. And I've always been art history, going to art museums, all of that. So
what's your favorite art museum in DC?
Phillips Collection.
Oh, I love the Phillips Collection. That was my very first date with my husband.
Oh.
And we played hooky from work.
Perfect. It was worth it.
Yeah, it was worth it. Natasha, what's your area of focus?
So my area of focus is business and education. By background, I've been either in-house or outside general counsel to a wide variety of independent schools and colleges for 25 years now. And I backed into the business work from being general counsel to one of the system campuses of the University of North Carolina. So I was small campus in a large system, and really learned how to do lots and lots of transactional work, and how to run strategy for creating new programs and expansion, enrollment growth, and put all the pieces together of programs, people, funding, and legislation. And when I moved into private practice, I expanded that kind of strategic practice of law I work with a lot of startups, professional practices. The common denominator is that they're mission focused, and that they have good values. They're clear about where they want to be going. And I do a fair amount of intellectual property work, like Ginny does, but from a different perspective. So I tend to work with companies that are commercializing technology that is being spun out of universities.
I don't know what that means. Technology that are being spun out from universities.
So,
like I'm thinking Facebook. That's the first one.
So think about how much research is done in the university setting. And so a professor will have created technology, patented it through the university. And then in order to bring it to market, there's usually a private company set up. The professor is often one of the owners. And the patent is owned by the university usually. And so there's a licensing agreement so that the private company can commercialize the technology and make it a viable product.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
And so in those scenarios, do you typically support the professor, the university, the entity, or all of the above?
So I usually represent the professor and the company, but there's an art to working with academic culture. And there's an art of making business deals so that everybody succeeds. And it usually takes generating some trust. You never know which products are going to make it and which ones don't. But if you are overreaching from the very moment that the business deals are starting, you can spend a lot of time infighting instead of shifting the creative energy towards successful commercialization.
Mm-hmm.
And then as if you look at an ongoing relationship, say a product is on its way, a lot of times professors and their graduate students will continue to work on related technology. Or you'll have part of their time spent in their scope of work at the university and part of their time spent in the new company. And so you have to set up good boundaries, right? What can you do where and what work product and intellectual property belongs to whom?
I mean, that's so lovely to think about. And I love knowing that about you because I think, we came to Boston because my husband was given a very prestigious opportunity here and in academia. And, he talks often about kind of these professors and just how undervalued, underpaid, overworked they are and how brilliant they are. So I love knowing that there are attorneys like you who provide that care and advocacy for our world's educators. I mean, I think that brings me to this idea of advocacy because, one thing I get about the two of you is just how much empathy and kindness really seems like it infuses its way into your work and how you advocate for your clients. How does that play out in your day-to-day?
So as we've created this practice, we can only be ourselves is really what we keep coming back to. And when I am advocating on behalf of a client, I am not going to be the loud person in the room screaming or anything like that. And it's much more effective if you don't do that. And just being true to who I am gives me more strength to achieve what needs to be done for my client.
I imagine it makes your clients much more trusting of you as well.
And you can be kind and empathetic and build a relationship with opposing counsel, and still have, and I would say have even better, difficult conversations. Being empathetic and kind doesn't mean that you're soft.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm.
I think that's such a good point. I think that, that's a big part of why I started this podcast, because I am very soft spoken and I am incredibly empathetic and sensitive. And I know that there are other people out there like me who don't have access to their voice. And I think that when we share ours, that we model that there is a space, that there is room for other kind, empathic, sensitive souls at the table and in the business world and in all areas of the business world. And they may not be as loud, they may not be as brazen, but they can still be equally as successful and impactful.
I think there's having clarity about your client's goals, being extraordinarily well prepared, and being tenacious. For me, it's easier to be tenacious and keep pushing until I get to an outcome that we'll call it satisfactory outcome. I can be tenacious because I know I have clarity on the goals.
I love that you also said well prepared, because that is that's a textbook quality from the highly sensitive people. This idea that typically we're the ones in the room who are extremely over prepared. And I guess what I mean is, when we choose to communicate, we are very well articulated in our points and resourced and educated, and say what there is for us to say. And it's not BS, it's well researched and well articulated and well thought out. And isn't that so refreshing? Well, as we wrap up here, the two of you are a certified B Corp, which I don't even know what that is. So I would love for you to educate me and my audience about what that means to become a certified B Corp.
So we're in the process of being certified by B Lab. Have you ever seen the little logos on different things that it says B Corp? It has like a little B. Once you realize it, you're going to start seeing it everywhere.
For sure.
So essentially what it means is that we are a for-profit company, but we are focused and working towards some other mission, impact, the greater good. And from the legal standpoint, I can't sue Natasha because we do that, and she can't sue me because of it. But really, it's how we operate. It's yeah.
So maybe at the risk of sounding too pedantic, under American law, if you're a for-profit company, then leadership's fiduciary responsibilities to shareholders or investors is financial profitability. And what benefit corporations, or sometimes they're called public impact companies, what they can do is they can have a dual bottom line of both financial profitability and social or environmental good. So it's really a mechanism of thinking about capitalism, right?
Mm-hmm.
Corporations and limited liability companies are products of capitalism. And so is there a way that business is a force for good rather than simply a force for profit?
I love knowing about that. How cool. What is that process like to become a certified B Corp?
So we, under Maryland law, shortly, hopefully today, actually, we will be a Maryland Benefit LLC. And that's as easy as just filing the paperwork. But then we're going through a certification process with B Lab, and they ask for things like, what's your environmental impact? Essentially, where do we put our money? And how do we use that to improve the world?
So for some kinds of companies, so B Lab has this very rigorous certification process, and it's standards based across a bunch of different areas of a business. For some companies, it's really easy because, say, for example, if we only served low-income clients, then it would be easy to show where our societal impact is. But for us, it's a little trickier because we serve lots of different clients, but there's a common denominator of serving people who are either historically underrepresented in business, which means that they're probably also have less or more difficult access to capital, to markets, and to technical know-how, because they're not as likely to have family members who have been involved in majority-dominated markets.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have another group of clients that are highly mission focused. So they might be a major developer of residential housing that promote green building practices. Or they might be a company that is, we talked about commercializing technology. They're creating battery technology that will have a substantial impact on climate change if they're successful. So
Yes.
we're serving clients who are bringing good to the world.
Yeah. I mean, I love hearing that. I can see why you're both, I mean, no one else is watching this on video, right? But you're clearly both so lit up about your work and who you serve.
There are not many benefit law firms in the world. So we're looking forward to being one of the first in our area.
Well, if any of my listeners want to know whether they would make your A team, who do they need to be? What are the qualities of your A team clients? Any that we haven't already heard on the podcast? I mean, I'm sure that.
So something that we, somebody who is interested in creating a well-run business, someone who's interested in treating their employees from the premise that compliance is a floor and that treating people well is valuable in every way. And we're always interested in some of the nonprofits that are, very mission focused, either internationally or domestically. And I think if there's one thing that, you can't really put on a website, but I think people on this podcast would appreciate, it's we want clients who value legal services as a value add to what they're trying to accomplish. And they want to partner with us, and they respect law as a force for good. We're not interested in being hired guns for people who want to use the law for ulterior motives. It's just not us.
I don't pick out the names for these podcast episodes, but I hope my podcast producer takes law as a force for good and runs with that, because that feels so indicative of who the two of you are and what we talked about on our episode today. I end every episode by asking my guests the same question, which is, what has supported you in becoming prosperous empaths? And to be super clear, what I mean by the term empath is exactly what you've been talking about, this idea of caring so deeply about others and the world around us, while also getting to thrive in every definition of the word, emotionally, physically, mentally, financially, spiritually, joyfully. So what's made the difference for the two of you? And I would love to hear from both of you.
I think we are both excellent attorneys. We both have excellent business acumen and all that stuff. And we could run a law firm successfully by ourselves, but together we are so much stronger. And having a partner that I can rely on and trust, she keeps me on track and makes sure I set my boundaries. It's been great. We just reaffirming that we're doing it right. This is what we should be doing right now.
That's hard to follow.
Yeah, and no dittos. You can't ditto her.
So I know a lot of people felt like the pandemic was a turning point for them in different ways. I think for me, it was a return to center, that I can and should shine my light in the world, and that this law firm was the right way to do it. You know, I love the quote that it's always the right time to do the right thing. And this is the practice that gives me the opportunity to do that all day, every day, and all of the small choices we make.
In my work, we say that you have to break down in order to break through. And I hear that the pandemic provided that opening for the both of you in this beautiful new practice and partnership and being a force for good. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. It was such a delight to be with you. I feel more grounded, as if I had just had a coaching call with my own coach rather than a call with two attorneys. So that's an amazing experience. Really a pleasure.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much, Kat.
Thank you so much for listening today to this episode of the Prosperous Empath Podcast with me, Catherine Wood. Make sure you subscribe and leave a review so you don't miss an episode, and so more empaths just like you and me can find the show. As a thank you, each month, one lucky reviewer will receive a 60-minute coaching session with a member of our Unbounded Potential team. You can find all the show notes and bonus resources over at unbounded-potential.com. Thank you so much for listening and locking arms with me to bring empathy and prosperity back into the world of business.